King Charles may finally be starting to realise that there is absolutely no reason to work with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. The monarch has withdrawn his invitation for Harry and Meghan to come to Sandringham over the summer. And the best news is that this is a response to what she describes as the Australia trauma tour. What's the one thing he didn't need? Stress caused by Harry and Meghan.
King Charles appears to be reaching a critical point in how he handles Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Behind palace doors, the mood is changing, and changing quickly. There's growing talk that trying to keep things friendly just isn't working anymore. In fact, some insiders are now asking a very direct question. What's the point of continuing this effort at all? What once looked like a fragile connection is now being described as something barely holding together. People close to the situation say the idea of reconciliation is losing strength fast. Some are even calling the situation impossible to manage. One major development being quietly discussed is the possible removal of any casual invitation for Harry and Meghan to visit Sandringham this summer. If that turns out to be true, it would signal a much firmer stance from the king. A clear sign that his patience may finally be running out. This shift is also being linked to what insiders are calling the Australia aftermath, where recent public moments involving the couple seem to have made tensions even worse. Advisors are reportedly warning the king that extending invitations right now could send the completely wrong message, especially at a time when the monarchy is trying to appear stable and in control. There's also growing frustration over the feeling that earlier warnings were not taken seriously. Some palace figures believe waiting too long to act has only made things worse, putting the royal household in difficult situations again and again, whether in public appearances, global media attention, or ongoing online discussions that refuse to fade.
And I am delighted by this because I have been really disappointed to see Charles's courtiers brief to the Daily Mail, oh no, we're not going to punish them. We don't want to upset them. The titles aren't going to go. The line of succession isn't going to go. No, you've got to do something, Charles, because this is getting worse. And they're embarrassing you. They're embarrassing you in Ukraine. They're embarrassing you in Washington, D.C. They're embarrassing you on the internet.
There's a strong belief that Prince William has been pushing for a stricter approach. He reportedly feels that being too soft could keep this cycle going forever. At the same time, there's concern that inviting Harry and Meghan to Sandringham might be seen as a sign of weakness, something that could damage the king's authority within the institution. Some of the sharper opinions circulating suggest that Harry is viewed as unpredictable, especially when things don't go his way. There are claims that emotional pressure has made family discussions more difficult than ever. Not everyone agrees with that view, but even the conversation itself is enough to keep tensions high at the top level. On top of all this, ongoing legal and reputation issues connected to people within the wider royal circle are making everything even more sensitive. Every move is now being closely watched. Even a small decision could trigger a much bigger reaction than expected. What's becoming clear is that a real shift is happening. The idea of a summer visit is no longer something people expect. It's something that has quietly disappeared. One insider reportedly said it very directly. If Harry and Meghan ever return to Sandringham, it won't be through any official invitation from the king. Right now, royal watchers are paying close attention, because what once looked like a possible path back together is now starting to look like a widening divide. There's a strong sense that the king's patience has been pushed to its limit. Past remarks are now being viewed as lines that should never have been crossed. At the center of all this is one key issue: access, and how that access is being used. There's growing frustration that every time there's even a small sign of peace, it quickly turns into headlines, media projects, or public attention, bringing more pressure onto the monarchy instead of easing it. It's as if every step forward creates an even bigger spotlight. People close to the situation say the king still cares on a personal level. He hasn't completely closed the door, especially when it comes to family. But that emotional connection is now clashing with what many inside the institution see as a repeating cycle of drama that simply doesn't settle.
Charles won't invite them, especially not after their trip to Australia. Harry, who likes to speak about anti-bullying, as seen as a bully inside the palace. Absolutely, he is. When he doesn't get what he wants, he stamps his foot like a child, and not only does what he was going to do anyway, but then tries to emotionally blackmail his father.
One of the biggest concerns right now is unpredictability. Plain and simple. There's a feeling that even when things seem calm, it may not last. Past patterns show that private conversations can suddenly turn into public stories, interviews, headlines, media waves, bringing all the tension back almost instantly. There's also been a noticeable shift in how Harry and Meghan are viewed publicly. At one time, they were seen as powerful global figures. But now, some voices are saying their influence isn't what it used to be. Critics argue that attempts to stay relevant often circle back to their royal connections. And that's exactly why any official invitation becomes such a sensitive issue. Timing is another major factor. With important royal duties, international visits, and packed schedules already in place, any added disruption is seen as risky. King Charles is balancing serious responsibilities along with personal health considerations. So stability has become the priority, not adding more complications. That's why frustration keeps growing over actions seen as poorly timed, especially when they overlap with major royal events. Inside the palace, it's not just about what has already happened. It's about the fear that the same patterns could repeat at the worst possible moments. What we're seeing now is a relationship stuck in a difficult position, pulled between genuine family ties and strict institutional reality. Good intentions alone no longer seem enough, especially when the risks of staying publicly connected keep increasing. There's also ongoing discussion about the stress surrounding all of this. Some commentators suggest it's adding extra pressure during an already sensitive time. Handling public duties is demanding on its own, but when personal challenges are added, the weight becomes even heavier. Observers point to recent international events and media coverage as proof of how quickly narratives can change. The concern isn't just one moment. It's the constant buildup of attention, pressure, and overlapping issues, leaving little room to breathe.
But the trip to Australia was the straw that broke the camel's back. It would indeed make the king look very weak if he did have them to Sandringham. Harry and Meghan will come, but it won't be at the king's invitation.
There's a clear and ongoing clash when it comes to communication between the Sussexes and the palace, and it keeps coming up again and again. Some insiders claim that private discussions are being overshadowed by public messaging and media interviews. However, not everyone agrees, and nothing has been officially confirmed. The palace has made its general position clear. Private matters should remain private. No spotlight. No headlines. Commentators continue to highlight this ongoing tension between public image and strict institutional rules. Every statement, every interview, every appearance gets analyzed in detail. Even small moments turn into major talking points. This cycle has become one of the biggest challenges in today's royal media environment, where nothing stays quiet for long. At the same time, there's growing chatter about workplace culture claims. But it's important to stay grounded. Many of these stories are unverified, often based on anonymous sources or secondhand information. They remain part of public debate, not confirmed fact.
It was Harry who once again went to the media and said, well, of course, we'd entertain. We'd love to have an invitation, something along the lines of we'd entertain an invitation to Sandringham. Of course, he wants that because if you're invited by the king, you automatically get state-funded security, which is all he cares about.
What's clear is that this situation continues to trigger strong reactions from every direction. Royal watchers are divided. Different people have completely different interpretations. While the monarchy itself remains calm and controlled in public, pressure continues to build behind the scenes. There's also a familiar idea being repeated in discussions, that how someone behaves in private reveals their true character. This concept spreads quickly through pop culture and social media. And now, it's being pulled directly into this royal narrative, adding even more layers to the conversation. Some observers point to behind-the-scenes changes, like staff turnover and shifting roles, as signs of instability. But again, these claims are mostly speculative. They are based on commentary, not solid proof. Meanwhile, attention is also shifting toward American media and how royal stories are shaped for audiences there.
And he also knows, as does everyone at this point, that Harry and Meghan have zero cachet right now. Not in the States, not in the UK, not anywhere. And in order to get it back, they need some royal shine on them. They need to just rub themselves with a little royal on all over and let it be known that once again, they're back in.
Over time, major editors and publications have played a key role in shaping how Harry and Meghan are covered. But the media world itself is changing. There have been layoffs, restructuring, and major shifts in how celebrity news is produced. Some say it reflects changing public interest. Others see it as part of a bigger shift, the decline of traditional print, and the rise of independent platforms. One former media figure, now working independently, has recently drawn attention again. They've been revisiting past coverage and offering new perspectives. According to these discussions, some of the large financial figures linked to streaming and podcast deals may have been exaggerated. But these claims are still part of ongoing debate, not fully confirmed. At the same time, more attention is now being given to the financial reality of high-profile life. And it's not as simple as it seems. Security costs, legal battles, ongoing responsibilities. These expenses can add up quickly, often far beyond what the public imagines. Still, exact figures vary widely. Different sources continue to present completely different versions, making it difficult to separate fact from speculation.
That is stress. And that, to me, is an illustration of someone who actually doesn't give a damn about his father. Do you see what I mean?
100%. But I also wonder if Harry would have gone to Ukraine if Australia had gone better.
What really stands out now is the gap between what people see on the surface and what may actually be happening behind the scenes. The story keeps shifting, depending on who is speaking. Instead of clear answers, there's a mix of speculation, personal opinions, and competing narratives, all fighting for attention. There's also fresh talk about future TV and streaming projects. Some voices in the industry are hinting that certain plans may not move forward as originally expected. At the same time, others are pushing back, saying this is completely normal. In the entertainment world, development changes all the time. Nothing is final until it's officially confirmed. Things can shift overnight, and early hype doesn't always match reality. Behind closed doors, attention is also turning towards staffing changes. Reports suggest there has been noticeable turnover and shifting roles within the operation. Some describe tension and different priorities. But again, these are not confirmed facts. They remain part of an ongoing mix of opinions that don't fully align. A key question being asked right now is about strategy. Would stepping out of the spotlight actually help? Some commentators believe going quiet for a while could cool things down and allow for a stronger return later. Others strongly disagree. They argue that in today's non-stop media world, staying out of sight is nearly impossible. There's always demand for updates, for content, for new angles. Media reactions to recent coverage also split. Some say there's nothing truly new being revealed. Others argue that revisiting old stories with fresh context still matters. This same story, different angle situation keeps the conversation alive. It fuels more debate, more analysis, more attention. There's also a bigger shift happening in media circles. Former journalists and editors are moving into independent platforms and re-examining past coverage. Some see this as setting the record straight. Others view it as proof that perspectives change, depending on timing, access, and new information. In the end, what's forming isn't one clear storyline. It's a scattered media landscape, where multiple voices, different timings, and competing interpretations all try to shape the bigger picture. And no single version fully takes control. That's what keeps the uncertainty alive.
And the one thing that the king and the palace have always said to him is, stop talking to the press, because that's his way of doing it. Well, daddy won't pick up the phone, so I'll call fill in the blank, the Times, the press, the Telegraph, whatever. And it's the same thing he did when he asked for the invitation.
There's also growing frustration within media circles about how certain royal stories have been handled over the years, especially when it comes to access. Who had it, who didn't, and who controlled the narrative. Some commentators are now openly questioning parts of the media system. They argue that too much reliance on insider access may have shaped stories in a certain direction. When reporting depends heavily on close sources, it can reflect a specific angle rather than the full picture. But others push back quickly. They say this isn't new. This is how royal and celebrity coverage has always worked. It's part of the system. What's really drawing attention now is how older stories are being revisited, this time with fresh eyes. Reports that were once dismissed or strongly denied are now resurfacing. They're appearing in books, documentaries, and deep dive commentary. And suddenly, those same stories are being received very differently compared to when they first came out.
He went out there and the palace came back and said, again, stop going public with this, because they see it for what it is. It's a bullying tactic. And for all of Harry and Meghan's chit chat about bullies and anti-bullying and how they're bullied, we all know that they are the actual bullies. Talk to any ex-staff member.
Journalists who stood by their reporting in the past are now speaking up again. Some say they faced heavy criticism at the time for details that are now being discussed all over again. This creates a clear tension between what was reported first and how it's being reinterpreted later. And that tension isn't going away anytime soon. When it comes to coverage of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the divide is especially strong. Their story has become one of the clearest examples of how split the media world really is. Some reports were denied immediately, only for parts of those same claims to reappear later, in different forms. It all depends on who is telling the story and how it's being framed. At the same time, the media landscape itself has changed completely. It's no longer controlled by a single dominant voice. Now there are traditional outlets, books, podcasts, independent creators, all sharing their own versions of events. That means the public is exposed to multiple perspectives at once, and not all of them match.
This moment with Sarah Fosmo, Prince Harry's chief of staff, where Meghan quite obviously gives her the death stare, and anyone who has worked for Harry and Meghan knows that you get the death stare in public, but what you get in private is strips torn off you.
Because of this, people are no longer following one clear storyline. Instead, public opinion is shaped by overlapping narratives, each one influenced by timing, access, and perspective. It's a crowded space, and figuring out what to trust has become a challenge on its own. Audiences today are more aware, more selective. Over time, people tend to stick with voices they feel are consistent and reliable, and that trust becomes incredibly valuable, especially in a world filled with non-stop commentary and competing opinions.
Crazy video clip of Meghan giving a staffer a very dirty look, and former staffers have exclusively told me it gives me PTSD. It's classic Meghan, literally a workplace psychopath, smiling to the public on one side of her face and glowering at you on the secret side. The woman treats anyone she has power over as totally disposable. You are just treated like a tradesman who is there to fix the toy.
Now shifting focus to King Charles. His recent address has drawn serious attention, even if it didn't dominate every headline the way some expected. Royal commentators have described it as calm, but firm, a response to growing calls for major changes within the monarchy, including discussions about its future direction. The message, recorded at Balmoral, carried a reflective and steady tone. It focused on duty, continuity, and the values connected to the legacy of the late Queen. In that moment, King Charles made one thing very clear. He is committed to continuing his role. There is no intention of stepping away. For many observers, this was a quiet but powerful signal, a clear message that stepping down is not being considered. Even critics acknowledged that the stance showed strength, especially during a time when pressure on the monarchy continues to grow.
And Meghan hasn't learned that rule of, if you want things to work, if you want things to go well, you have to treat the people around you well.
At the same time, a wider conversation is taking place about how modern monarchies should evolve. Comparisons are often made with other European royal families. Some of them have made significant structural changes, simplifying roles, reducing pressure on extended family members. Supporters of reform believe this approach could strengthen the system in the long term. They argue that clearer boundaries would create more stability, but others strongly disagree. They believe tradition and continuity are the foundation of the monarchy, and sudden changes could disrupt that balance.
The finances are not what the headlines tell you. The $100 million Netflix deal was never $100 million. The $20 million Spotify deal was not $20 million. Sources say that the inheritance that Princess Diana gave Harry is mostly gone, and their outgoings are huge, with security bills, multiple mortgages, and legal fees estimated at $38 million.
At the same time, there's growing recognition of the personal weight carried by King Charles, especially during periods of health challenges. More commentary is beginning to reflect understanding of how demanding this role truly is. Managing public duties while under constant global attention is already intense. Add personal challenges into that, and the pressure becomes even greater. What's becoming clear is that this moment reflects something deeper. A larger tension within the monarchy itself. Tradition versus change. Stability versus reform. History versus the future. And through all of this, King Charles is making one thing absolutely clear. He intends to remain in position, to carry out his duties, no matter how loud the debate becomes. That's where things stand right now. But in this world, nothing stays still for long. The story is still unfolding, and the next chapter could shift everything once again. So what do you think about all of this? Drop your thoughts in the comments, let's talk about it. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Hit the like button, and share this with someone who needs to hear it.